Hello and welcome to my channel, Catholic Psychology. You're with David King. Today, I want to continue talking about life philosophies, and I'm going to finish up with the last four philosophies that I want to talk about. These are Nihilism, Rationalism, Virtue Ethics, and Empiricism. Okay, let's begin with a nihilist. What is the nihilistic logic? A nihilist basically says that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. We just exist by chance, kind of similar to an existentialist like what I've talked about before. They basically say there's no real meaning behind why we're here, and there's no real value to anything, and so one of the logics a nihilist will say is, oh, well, we're all going to die one day anyway, so there's no real value in the things that we do. And what this can actually do, nihilism can be good in some ways, because when there's no specific value in any one thing, everything is equal. And so it sort of frees you up when you're a nihilist to make any decision you want, because nothing is more valuable than anything else. But at the same time, when there's no value in things, when there's no purpose or meaning in things, life can sort of feel empty and unfulfilling, because again, nothing has value, so there's no real reason or motivation behind why you should choose one thing over another. So when you think of the world from a nihilistic perspective, you're potentially going to fall into a lot of negative emotion, or maybe struggle with motivation to keep on moving on, because you can't really understand why you should do things. You may struggle with understanding why people value and prioritize things, because you yourself don't value or prioritize things. And you may struggle with decision making, because again, if nothing has value, there's no way to choose one thing over another thing, because if nothing has value, everything is of equal value. And so it's hard to distinguish between what direction we go. So a nihilist is someone who potentially, actually, even though they're trying to free themselves, may actually make themselves very lost. And so now we go into rationalism. A rationalist is someone who relies solely on reason and logic and prioritizes that over sensory experience and emotion as the primary source of knowledge and guidance of action. So, what does this look like? Well, the modern example of a rationalist, if you've gone around on media, you probably would have run across people that say things like, it's facts over feelings. They don't prioritize empathy. They prioritize believing in a system where it's basically like saying there is some way the world works. A rationalist tends to be more black and white in the way that they see things. They basically look at things and they go, what is the reason behind this? So they're good at sort of identifying why they're doing things. So a rationalist is someone who tends to be pretty confident, because they have set up a system where they're very good at identifying what they value and prioritize, and they use logic to guide their action. And so rationalists tend to be, they're a bit more withdrawn, a little bit less emotionally, what you might call emotionally intelligent. They don't value emotions as highly. And so a rationalist is someone who, they may struggle to connect with people or empathize with people, because they rely a bit too heavily on logic rather than human connection and understanding. So while rationalism does have its good things, like it promotes decision making, it promotes confidence, you can fall short in the other departments, like how you connect with people and understand people and empathize with people. Okay, so that's rationalism. Let's move on to virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is something that Aristotle, it was the philosophy he encouraged. And he basically said that there is some virtuous character that we should work towards being. And this virtue promotes a meaningful life. So where do we see virtue ethics in our society today? Well, virtue ethics, I believe, is actually one of the ones that sort of transcends culture, which is kind of interesting because not many logics transcend culture. But the way virtue ethics does is that across pretty much all cultures, all ages, there has been what's known as the archetypes. So an example of this is like the hero, the villain, the anti-hero, all those sorts of things. It's basically a character that we can relate to, identify with, or acknowledge as someone who has the virtues of something that is desirable. So a modern day example, maybe you're someone who is really into Marvel and you watched all of the universe up until, when Iron Man does the thing. And, it's a memorable moment. It really stuck with people. He made a decision and he stood for certain virtues and people resonate with that. And so what this is basically saying is that virtue ethics says there is some sort of admiration that people naturally have towards certain qualities, and that in pursuing becoming those qualities, you can have a fulfilling life, whether that be because people will admire you and respect you, or you will have your own sort of self-worth and value because you're living out in a way that is good. So virtue ethics is someone who has a moral code, someone who says, I should do this and I shouldn't do that. So they tend to be, again, a little bit more black and white than someone who focuses more on freedom. They're someone who tries to control their actions according to some sort of good or bad. And so that's virtue ethics, someone who has that moral code and tries to live up to becoming the best version of themselves. And then we have empiricism. So empiricism is someone that believes that knowledge comes primarily from sensory experience and evidence and encourages a scientific and observational approach to life. So what does this mean? That means an empiricist is someone who may go, well, scientists have done this study and they found this result. And so there's some association here, some scientific reason, some natural phenomenon that happens within people, and they put emphasis on what is demonstrated through science. So it's basically they value knowledge and they value understanding of why certain behaviors are done, why people live a certain way, and they believe a lot more in things like what I've talked about. So an empiricist will believe in things like conditioning, things like rewards and punishment. They'll believe in human motivation, desire. They'll believe that these things all have an impact on human behavior and outcomes. And they will basically use science as their primary guiding tool on what they should and shouldn't do. So an empiricist is basically saying what we see in the world, what we experience in the world, all can be explained. So an empiricist, again, believes that there's some sort of explanation behind things. And they want to believe in sort of a logic or a reason of the world and what we experience. And so, again, an empiricist tends to fall more into the black and white category. They tend to believe, well, this is the scientific reason that I should believe this thing, and so that's what I'm going to do. And so that wraps up the 10 philosophies that I wanted to cover, talking to you about how people see the world and generate their belief system. I'll see you next time on Catholic Psychology.